Good evening and welcome to another edition of Jay's Retro Toys and Games. It's episode 25 on this season 2 edition for Wednesday, September 14th, 2022. I'm your host, Jason DeCanio, and tonight we got a great show for you, including a toy that has been around as far as 1950-ish, give or take. And we love this toy very much. I think a lot of people would love it. It's one of those things that's a helical spring toy invented by Richard James in the early 40s, actually, and it can perform a number of tricks, including traveling down a flight of steps, end over end as it stretches and reforms itself with the aid of gravity and its own momentum, or appear to levitate for a period of time after it's been dropped. These interesting characteristics have contributed to its success as a toy in its home country of the United States, resulting in many popular toys with the components in a wide range of countries. And let's see if you know what this toy is based on the commercial.
It's Slinky, for fun is the best of the toys. It's Slinky, the favorite of girls and boys. It's Slinky, for fun is the best of the toys. It's Slinky, the favorite of girls and boys. Everyone wants a Slinky, you ought to get a Slinky.
Well, I think you probably already know that we're talking about the Slinky tonight on Jay's Retro Toys and Games. We welcome you to the show tonight to talk about this 82-year-old toy. 82 years that this toy's been around. Oh my God. Can't believe it. All right, let's look at it right now. The Slinky was invented and developed by American naval engineer Richard T. James in 1943 and demonstrated at Gimbel's department store in Philadelphia in November of 1945. The toy was a hit, selling its entire inventory of 400 units in 90 minutes. And James and his wife Betty formed James Industries in Clifton Heights, Pennsylvania, to manufacture Slinky and several related toys such as the Slinky Dog and Susie the Slinky Worm. Then in 1960, James's wife Betty James became president of James Industries, and in 1964 moved it back to Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. Then in 1998, she sold the company to Poof Productions, or Poof Products, Inc. The Slinky was originally priced at $1, but many paid much more due to price increases of spring steel in Pennsylvania. It has, however, remained modestly priced throughout its history as a result of Betty James's concern about the toy's affordability for less affluent customers. In addition to its use as a toy, it has been used as a classroom teaching tool, as a portable and extendable radio antenna in wartime, particularly the Vietnam War, and in NASA physics demonstrations, as when astronaut Margaret Ray Seddon demonstrated its behavior in zero gravity during a telecast from the Discovery Space Shuttle in 1985. It was inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame at the Strong in Rochester, New York in 2000, and in 2003 it was named to the Toy Industry Association's Century of Toys list. In its first 60 years, about 300 million have been sold. In 1943, Richard T. James, a naval mechanical engineer stationed at the William Cramp & Sons shipyards in Philadelphia, was developing springs that could support and stabilize sensitive instruments aboard ship in rough seas. James accidentally knocked one of the springs from a shelf and watched as the spring stepped in a series of arcs to a stack of books, to a tabletop, and to the floor, where it recoiled itself and stood upright. James's wife Betty later recalled, "He came home and said, 'I think if I got the right property of steel and the right tension, I could make it walk.'" James experimented with different types of steel wire over the next year and finally found a spring that would walk. Betty was dubious at first, but changed her mind after the toy was fine-tuned and neighborhood children expressed an exciting interest in it. And she dubbed the toy Slinky, meaning sleek and graceful, after finding the word in a dictionary and deciding that the word aptly described the sound of a metal spring expanding and collapsing. With a USD $500 loan, the couple formed James Industries, originally James Spring and Wire Company. It had 400 Slinky units made by a local machine shop, hand-wrapped each in yellow paper, and priced them at $1 a piece. Each was 2.5 feet tall, or 2.5 inches tall, and included 98 coils of high-grade blue-black Swedish steel. The Jameses had difficulty selling Slinky to toy stores, but in November of 1945, they were granted permission to set up an inclined plane in the toy section of Gimbel's department store in Philadelphia to demonstrate the toy. Slinky was a hit, and the first 400 units were sold within 90 minutes. In 1946, Slinky was introduced at the American Toy Fair. Richard James opened shop in Albany, New York after developing a machine that could produce a Slinky within seconds. The toy was packaged in a black letter box and advertising saturated America. James often appeared on television shows to promote Slinky. In 1952, the Slinky Dog debuted. Other Slinky toys introduced in the 50s included the Slinky Train Loco, the Slinky Worm Susie, and the Slinky Crazy Eyes, which were a pair of glasses that uses Slinkies over the eye holes attached to plastic eyeballs. You know, the ones that they use in those comedy skits. James Industries licensed the patent to several other manufacturers, including Wilkening Manufacturing Company of Philadelphia and Toronto, which produced spring-centered toys such as Mr. Wiggles Leapfrog and Mr. Wiggles Cowboy. In its first 10 years, James Industries sold 100 million Slinkies at $1 a piece. That would be the equivalent to $6 billion, adjusted for inflation, in gross revenue over those 5 years. In 1960, Richard James left the company after his wife filed for divorce, and he became an evangelical missionary in Bolivia with Wycliffe Bible translators. Betty James managed the company, juggled creditors, and in 1964 moved the company to Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. Richard James died in 1974, and the company and its product line expanded under Betty James's leadership. In 1995, she explained the toy's success to the Associated Press by saying, "It's the simplicity of it." Betty James insisted upon keeping the original Slinky affordable. In 1996, when the price ranged from $1.89 to $2.69, she told the New York Times, "So many children can't have expensive toys, and I feel a real obligation to them. I'm appalled when I go Christmas shopping and $60 to $80 for a toy is nothing." In 2008, Slinky cost $4 to $5, and Slinky Dogs about $20. Then in 1998, James Industries was sold to Poof Products, Inc. of Plymouth, Michigan, a manufacturer of foam sports balls. Slinky continued production in Hollidaysburg, and in 2003, James Industries merged with Poof Products, Inc. to create Poof Slinky, Inc. Betty James died of congestive heart failure in November of 2008 at the age of 90, after having served as president of James's Industry from 1960 to 1998. Over 300 million Slinkies have been sold between 1945 and 2005, and the original Slinky is still a bestseller. In July of 2020, The Slinky brand was sold to Just Play. And here are the rules that govern the mechanics of a Slinky. There are Hooke's law and the effects of gravitation. Now, due to simple harmonic motion, the period of oscillation of a dangling Slinky is T equals 2 pi with the square root of m over k, where T is the time of the period of oscillation, m is the Slinky's mass, and k is its spring constant. For all you trigonometry and fans out there who love these harmonic motions and mathematical equations, as they call it. In the state of equilibrium of a Slinky, all net force is canceled throughout the entire Slinky. This results in a stationary Slinky with zero velocity. As the positions of each part of a Slinky is governed by the Slinky's mass, the force of gravity, and the spring constant, various other properties of the Slinky may be induced. The length of an idleized Slinky extended under its own weight, assuming the fully compressed length, is negligible. And that's where L equals W over 2K, where L is the length of the Slinky, W is the weight, and K is the spring constant. So, when set in motion on a stepped platform such as a stairway, the Slinky transfers energy along its length in a longitudinal wave, and the whole spring descends end over end in a periodical motion as if it were walking down one step at a time. When the top end of the Slinky is dropped, the information of the tension change must propagate to the bottom end before both sides begin to fall. The top of an extended Slinky will drop while the bottom initially remains in its original position, compressing the spring. This creates a suspension time of 0.3 seconds for an original Slinky, but has potential to create a much larger suspension time. A suspended Slinky center of mass is accelerating downward at about 32 feet per second when released. The lower portion moves up toward the top portion with an equivalent constant upward acceleration as the tension is relieved. Now, the jingle for the Slinky television commercial was created in Columbia, South Carolina in 1962 with Johnny McCulloch and Homer Vesperman writing the music and Charles Weagley penning the lyrics. It became the longest-running jingle in advertising history. The jingle has been parodied and referenced in popular culture. It is seen in the log commercial on the Ren and Stimpy show and sung by actor Jim Carrey in Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. The song is also referenced in the movie Lords of Dogtown, where it is sung in full by Emile Hirsch and is sung by Eddie Murphy as part of the final routine in the stand-up comedy film Eddie Murphy Raw. Early in the history of James Industry, Helen Herrick Malsed of Washington State sent the company a letter and drawings for developing Slinky pool toys. The company liked her ideas, and Slinky Dog and Slinky Train were added to the company's product line. Slinky Dog, a small plastic dog whose front and rear ends were joined by a metal Slinky, debuted in 1952. Malsed received royalties of $60,000 to $70,000 annually for 17 years on her patent for the Slinky pool toy idea, but never visited the plant. In 1995, the Slinky Dog, voiced by Jim Varney and Blake Clark, was redesigned for all of Pixar's Toy Story and Toy Story live-action movies. James Industries had discontinued their Slinky Dog a few years previously. Betty James approved of the new Slinky Dog, telling the press, "The earlier Slinky Dog wasn't nearly as cute as this one. The molds used in manufacturing the new toy created problems for James Industries, so the plastic front and rear ends were manufactured in China with James Industries doing the assembly and packaging. The entire run of 825,000 redesigned Slinky Dogs sold out well before Christmas of '95. Plastic Slinkies are also available, and they can be made in different colors. Many of them are made with the colors of the rainbow in rainbow order. They were marketed in the 70s as a safer alternative to metal Slinkies, as they did not present a hazard when inserted into electrical sockets. The plastic spring toy known as the Plastic Slinky was invented by Donald James Riemann Sr. of Master Mark Plastics in Albany, Minnesota. Riemann came up with the idea as he was playing with different techniques to produce a spiral hose for watering plants. However, as it came off the assembly line, according to his children, it looked more like a Slinky. He worked at it until it came out perfectly and then went to Betty James with his prototype. Riemann manufactured the Plastic Slinky for Betty James for several years. Eventually, Betty James decided to manufacture the product exclusively through James Manufacturing, effectively ending the production of the toy by the small Minnesota company. Riem's patent number 4120929 was filed on December 28, 1976, and issued by the U.S. Patent Office on October 17, 1978. In 1999, the United States Postal Service issued a Slinky postage stamp. The Slinky was inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame in 2000 in their Celebrate the Century stamp series. A bill to nominate the Slinky as the state toy of Pennsylvania was introduced by Richard Geist in 2001, but not enacted. The same year, Betty James was inducted into the Toy Industry Association's Hall of Fame, and in 2003, Slinky was named to the Toy Industry Association's Century of Toys list, a roll call of the 100 most memorable and most creative toys of the 20th century. High school teachers and college professors have used Slinkies to simulate the properties of waves. United States troops in the Vietnam War used them as mobile radio antennas, as have amateur radio operators, and NASA has used them in zero-gravity physics experiments in the space shuttle. Slinkies and similar springs can be used to create a laser gun-like sound effect. And this is done by holding up a Slinky in the air and striking one end, resulting in a metallic tone which sharply lowers in pitch. The effect can be amplified by attaching a plastic cup to one end of the Slinky. In 1959, John Cage composed an avant-garde work called Sounds of Venice, scored for, among other things, a piano, a slab of marble, and Venetian broom, a birdcage of canaries, and an amplified Slinky. Metal Slinky can be used as an antenna. It resonates between 7 and 8 megahertzes. During Vietnam War, it was used as a portable antenna for local HF communication. This setup had many advantages over a long wire shot from M79 grenade launcher: small dimensions, fast and quiet installation, reusability, good takeoff angle for local communication, and good enough performance. It was also used to extend range of a handheld radio. 1985, in conjunction with the Johnson Space Center and the Houston Museum of Natural Science, Space Shuttle Discovery astronauts created a video demonstrating how familiar toys behave in space. "It won't slink at all," Dr. M. Ray said of Slinky. "It sort of droops." The video was prepared to stimulate interest in school children about the basic principles of physics and the phenomenon of weightlessness. In 1992, the Bishop Museum in Honolulu, Hawaii, hosted an interactive traveling exhibit developed by the Franklin Institute of Philadelphia called What Makes Music. Among other things, visitors could examine what makes musical sound by creating waves on an 8-foot-long version of a Slinky toy. Several online videos have shown the Slinky acting as an excellent squirrel deterrent for bird feeders when mounted on the pole of the bird feeder to prevent squirrels from climbing up the pole to reach the bird feeders. And there you have it, folks. The Slinky in all of its glory. Right here on Jay's Retro Toys and Games. Episode 25 has concluded. And we thank you very much for your continued support of our show. Remember, of course, to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Always remember, it's always on Anchor and Spotify as well, too. But we hope that you will listen to both and support both at the same time. Next time on the program, we're going to be looking at a game. What kind of game, you wonder to yourself? Well, we're going to look at something that I thought we might take a look at that has to do with an outside game. And there's many versions of this game. And the origin goes back to 1200 to 600 to 500 BCE. From the painted gray ware era of prehistoric India. And it's a game, it's a popular playground game in which players toss a small object called a lagger into numbered triangles or a pattern of rectangles outlined on the ground and then hop or jump through the spaces and retrieve the object. It's a children's game that can be played with several players or alone. What are we talking about? Hopscotch, the physical and cognitive workout playground game. And that's that's this Friday, actually, on episode 26 of Jay's Retro Toys and Games. I'm Jason Icanio. Remember, folks, be honest, be real, and keep it simple, stupid. Yes. We will see you on Friday for episode 26. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to the David3000 Network for great more content like this one.